respect everybody's time, because I know some people are short for time, and this is such an important Mishnah. I think if there's any Mishnah that really speaks to how to live life in healthy balance, it's this Mishnah. Okay, so I'm going to start with a trivia quiz. I just thought about this 5 minutes ago. Okay, so raise your hand if you know the answer. Well, I'm making it too easy if I give too many details. What public figure in relatively recent years quoted but misquoted the Hillel's famous aphorism? Hu haya omer, he used to say, im ein ani li mili, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? Ukesha'ani la'atzmi ma'ani, and if I'm only for myself, what am I? Ve'im lo achshav imatai, and if not now, when? Okay, little trivia quiz. What very public figure quoted it, but did misquote it a bit, but quoted it in the last 15 years, 20 years? Okay, I'll give you one hint since nobody immediately raised their hand. It was an American president. Nobody? Oh, I thought everyone would know that. Okay, it was Bill Clinton. Nobody remembers that? Okay, anyway, it's not that important, but it is important because it's very universal. It's a universalist message. But like everything in Judaism, it maybe has like a sort of one layer of understanding and then a much deeper level of understanding. But on the maybe surface level of understanding, this is speaking about the healthy balance between the natural state of the human being, which is to be self-focused and also focused on one's immediate family. And then after that healthy need is met, recognizing that we're all obligated to extend outward to other people and to give of ourselves to other people. And so the famous words are, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? So on the most basic level, what that's saying is that it's healthy, it's God-given, it's the way we're wired, that we are inherently and primarily focused on ourselves, which doesn't mean that we're self-absorbed or narcissistic or selfish, but self-concern is wired into the human being, and it's supposed to be that way. It's not unhealthy to be self-concerned. If you're not concerned for yourself, who will be concerned for you ultimately? So the idea that the human being is first concerned about their own selves is not a reflection of selfishness if it's in balance. But once a person is meeting their own needs, is caring for themselves, is honoring their own healthy need for taking care of themselves, what is their life really if they're not concerned about other people? So we have the balanced individual, the Judaic picture. This is Hillel. Hillel is quoted more than any other sage in all of Pirkei Avot. He's one of the preeminent thinkers of this period. And he clearly says the human being begins with themselves. That's healthy, that's normal, that's good. It has to be that way. And then it extends onto others. And then ultimately, when that kind of call it self-care in modern terms, when that self-take care is adequate, it must extend onto other people. It has to extend to other people. It's not enough to remain with oneself. And then the famous end of the Mishnah, which everybody knows, is Ve'im lo achshav ematai, and if not now, when? So that is on the most obvious level a call to all of us procrastinators, I don't know if you struggle with procrastination. I surely do. This is an imperative to take care of yourself, take care of the people in your closest environment, extend that full self to other people, and to do it now. Doing it now is such a Jewish idea, because we have probably the preeminent midah, the preeminent value is humility. That we're learning all about humility in these Torah portions with Moshe Rabbeinu, with Moses, who was considered ha'anav mikol ha'adam, the most humble man who ever lived. And I was thinking, actually, Leslie, I was thinking a little bit about what you were talking about last week, that there is a description, and it's really the only like adjective that's used to describe Moses, who haya ha'adam ha'anav mikol ha'adam. He was the most humble human being who ever lived. But what was very interesting about Moses, and we've discussed this before, is he knew exactly who he was. He knew his greatness, and he also knew his responsibility to change the world, to give the Torah to the Jewish people, to bring the Jewish people to the land of Israel, up to the cusp of the land of Israel, to bring them through the desert, I'm not in this order, to cross them through the Red Sea, he knew exactly who he was. He knew his greatness. So humility never meant negating one's greatness. It never means kind of false humility, which is negating the greatness that you know that you have. But the reason that Moses is called ha'anav mikol ha'adam, the most humble man of all men, is because he never attributed it only to his own awesomeness, to his own hard work, to his own skill set. He always attributed his greatness to his source. And always to the ultimate source, which was God himself. So if not now, when is similar in the sense that it's the ultimate statement of humility. I do not know how long my life is going to be. So my obligation to give of myself, to know myself, to express myself, and to ultimately use it to give to other people, I have to do now, because it's arrogant. Even though we do this all the time, we say, when we get to this stage, we're going to do this. This is part of the reason that we made Aliyah, even though we had no intention of leaving so soon. It was a little bit the im lo achshav ematai, which was, we don't know what the future is going to hold. If we know this is the value, then we have to do it. Even though we kind of, for a long time, put it on a shelf called someday, at a certain point you say, im lo achshav ematai. Who am I to say that there's going to be a tomorrow? So if I know something has to be done, I'm required to do it today. So just before we're gonna bring the class onto the screen, but I'm gonna just start with saying that this first acknowledges that human interest begins with oneself. That's not negative. That's not selfish. That's healthy, and that extends almost like an onion, almost like the layers of an onion, to one's loved ones, and then extends even farther to all of humanity. And, that seems kind of obvious, but it's actually not obvious. Very often you'll see that people are committed to movements. They're absolutely committed to movements, but they don't have personal integrity. And there was even movements, there was even whole isms in modern history that were about the collective, while negating even the family and the individual. Think communism, think, Chinese communism in China and in Soviet Union. This was all about the collective at the expense of the family. And what we actually learned about the psychological fallout of communism was that by focusing on the collective, on the masses, on the collective whole, without a healthy relationship to oneself and one's immediate family, caused tremendous paranoia and distrust toward one's family even. It really caused the dissolution of the family. So we have a hierarchy. We have an onion, so to speak. We've used the metaphor of an onion many times, which is the center is one's healthy relationship to oneself that extends outward to one's family. But we're obligated as whole human beings to extend that to the world around us. So that's kind of the hierarchy or the order of a healthy human being. So that's kind of like on a, I don't know, maybe like on a more surface level. That is the basic meaning of this famous Mishnah. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? And if I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? So that's our basic level, but let's bring the class onto the screen, Julie, and look a little bit more deeply at this. If you look at the Mishnah, if you have your Koran book, you'll notice that the word I is in here an awful lot. Hu haya omer, he used to say, im ein ani li, okay, if I am not for me, who will be for me? That's 3 me's. Ukesha ani la'atzmi ma ani. Okay, that's 6 me's. Ve'im lo akshav imatai. So within 3 sentences, we have six times that some derivative or some form of the word I or me comes up. And what many commentators tell us is that one of the most important things about this Mishnah is to really, really understand what we're saying when we say I. Like, I mean, it sounds sort of ephemeral or abstract, but who am I? What do I mean when I say I? And the commentators make a significant distinction. You have an I, a self, a primordial self, a self that's separate from who you became through your culture, through how you were raised, through the values you were raised with, through the values of society, from what the outside kind of projected upon you is who you should be. In other words, you have a deepest self I, and that deepest self I is created in the image of God. In other words, you know, I was looking for this piece of Talmud and I could not find it. I have to find the source of it, but it says something, I think Rashi quotes it, but it's from the Talmud, and it says that God is not like the coin maker. The coin maker puts a coin in a mold and makes many coins in exactly the same mold. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but God, by contrast, makes every single person in an absolute unique mold. That there is an I encoded in your soul that is absolutely unique. You can't be a little unique or a lot unique. Unique is a unique term. You are absolutely unique, that no one ever was or is, and no one ever will be exactly like you. There's something encoded in you that is almost a mold created in the divine image. But that I, that true deep self, gets wrapped up, so to speak, in a body, in a person born at a certain time of history, to certain parents, and through their acculturation, through the values of society, through the pressures of society, through the specifics of one's external situation, they develop what's called, or I think it's not Freud. Oh my gosh, I'm totally spacing. For the famous therapist, which I'm going to remember. called the persona. Oh gosh, who was it? Someone write it in the notes. That we have a persona. A persona is who we become in our society. That it's like you could kind of say, like, to a certain degree, that your personality that you have today is like your outside eye. And if we leave it there, if we just kind of assume that we are what we've accumulated through living in our specific time, with specific parents, with specific in a specific situation at a specific time in history, with specific techunat hanefesh, meaning specific talents and struggles and personality inclinations, how we acculturate. If we think that's just us, we are not seeing or even betraying the transcendent. Yeah, Jung, thank you very much. Ding dong, it's Carl Jung, right? So Carl Jung talked about the persona, that that we have almost like an external eye, the person we created. Now, for some people, it's pleasant, it works for them, but is it really like the most deepest level of I? And this, rabbis tell us, on a deeper level, is what the first part of our Mishnah means. So listen carefully. The rabbis say that li, the me, is the persona me. And then ani is the deepest self, created in the mold, God's mold, absolutely unique. And the first part of our Mishnah is saying, im ein ani li, me li, which is, if there's no ani to me, who is me? It sounds a little bit like a little silly almost, but think about it a little more deeply. In essence, what it's saying is, if I don't figure out that there is some sort of like primordial or most basic or spiritual or transcendent sense of myself, sense of I, that's separate from who I became because of the culture I was born into, then honestly, who am I? Is every person just like a product of how they're raised? Is that the sum total of a human being? And this is literally what God says in his commandment to Abraham, to Avram, when he tells Abraham, Lech lecha. He says, go, Lech lecha. He gives his command to one of Abraham's first commands, not his first, but one of the first commands, to leave his country, to leave his birthplace, and to leave Beit Avicha, and to leave his father's house. He says, go, Lech lecha. We understand, we've all learned this, that when God says, go to yourself, it says, go for yourself, Lech lecha, but you can read it as, go to your deeper I. Go to that deep, transcendent identity that's separate from your cultural identity. There's something way deeper than just who you became by virtue of how you were raised. So in order to get to your deepest self, God says you've got to leave 3 levels of identity. And what were these were like the non-self aspects of Abraham's identity that he had to break away from in order to become the patriarch, the foundation stone of the Jewish people. Don't forget that Judaism was born on a civil, legal, official, so to speak, level at Sinai when God gave us the 10 Commandments and we received the Torah at Mount Sinai. That's when we legally or officially or civilly became a people. But hundreds of years before that, with Abraham was the foundation stone. He was called the Av HaRishon. He was the first patriarch of the Jewish people before they legally became an before they legally became a people at Sinai. So in order for there to be a foundation.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, Hannah, I think you have to mute yourself.
Good.
Hannah?
Did you take a shower already?
Hannah, you got to mute yourself. Yeah. So he had to leave 3 levels of identity in order to come to his true self and be the foundation of the Jewish people. Now think about these 3 levels of identity. So lech lecha me'artzecha, from your country. Okay, that's a huge one. Your country, whether you're wherever you are on the political spectrum, wherever your country affects you deeply, the ideology of your country, the ethos of your country. Lech lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetecha, from your birthplace. That's on an even deeper level. That's the sort of the kind of the deep ways of being that come from where you're born. Beit avicha, and on the deepest level, in terms of the hardest level, Beit avicha, your family home, your father's house, meaning everything that, you know, we know this. We've all, I think at this point in our lives, we all understand that even though we're 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, we still have a 6-year-old inside of us that very, very often, and we know this is basic, but very often things that happen in the early formative years freeze us to a certain degree. And even though we're not even necessarily consciously aware of it, that place that we were frozen in, particularly if there was some sort of trauma, but even if there wasn't overt trauma, that place that we were frozen in directs our behavior. Even if we're 75, it actually directs our behavior much later on. The things that we struggle with, if we bring them back, we often can bring them all the way back to Beit Avicha, to that early childhood time where our personality formulated. So God is saying in this famous commandment to Abraham, you are going to be the foundation stone of the nation that's going to change the world and bring the Mashiach and bring redemption to the world. It's imperative that when you lay down the foundation stone, it's not coming from an acculturated version of you, but from the deepest, truest version of you. And therefore, lech lecha, go out from external identity in order to tap in to who you really are. And Dr. Abraham Twersky, Alav Shalom, he died, I don't even remember, maybe a year and a half ago. He writes, in order for a person to have a meaningful, constructive identity, okay, so this is very important. He's saying to us, you want to have a healthy, constructive identity. It should be one you give to yourself. If a person's identity is essentially given to him by others, he really has no identity at all. The person must have a valid awareness of his abilities and character traits. He must be aware of his character defects in order to correct them. He must also be cognizant of his character strengths. If I don't have a personal identity, then who can give me one? Who am I? Who will be for me? So to sum up Rabbi Dr. Twersky's words, it's imperative that we have a meaningful, constructive identity, and it has to be one that we give to ourselves. We really need to peel the onion and understand what is special about us, what is unique about us, what drives us, where we're uniquely obligated to give back to the world, what defects hold us back. You know, I think Alan Marinas used the metaphor of like, what pot of soup are you always falling into again and again and again? Where we need to correct, where we need to do a tikkun, be metakein, constantly assessing our identity separate from the one that culture acculturates us to have. So again, we've got the first words are im ein ani li mili. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I don't understand who I am separate from external culture, who am I? And who's going to do that for me? And Rav Noach Weinberg, also who passed away, gosh, I don't even know, maybe 15, 20 years ago, who founded Aish Torah, he says one thing that's imperative in terms of understanding me is to not confuse myself with my bodily and ego drives. Julie, just go down on the sheet. So he used to say to us, and I've said this before, but it's so kind of interesting. He used to say to us, people say like, I'm starving, or, I'm so thirsty, or, sometimes, or I'm obsessed with this, or whatever it is. So very often we confuse the drives of our body or our ego, like just the thing, we just want to be chill and we want to chill out and we want to have convenience and we just want to watch Netflix and we want power or we want food or we want money, whatever it is. We have to be very careful to say like, I want this, because the genuine I might not want this at all. The other week we talked about how the genuine I is not the part that wants the kavod, wants the honor. So it's the acculturated I. It's sort of like the fake I, or the Yetzer Hara even, but we call it I. We say, I need this, I want this. And Hillel says, if I don't have mastery of my I, if I think that I am the bodily drives, ego drives, the things I just I feel like doing, then that's very confusing. That's why Rav Noach Weinberg would always say, you should get used to saying like, my body is starving, which, sounds very contrite and sort of strange to say. But the idea of always making a distinction between like the body drives or even the ego drives and what the true self wants, what the true self is. So that's the first part of our Mishnah, is arriving, the imperative to arrive at the authentic, unique self that is deeper or transcends the self that you became by virtue of living in the world that you lived in. That's number one. Number two, our second Mishnah, a second verse is Ukesh ani la'atzmi, ma ani. If I'm only for myself, who am I? Julie, go down a little bit. There's so many beautiful metaphors for this, but the idea is this, that if a person takes the first part of the Mishnah very seriously, and they construct a true sense of identity, which is really what's unique to me, what drives me, what do I feel passionate about, what am I interested in, where do I excel? And then once I understand that, like what really drives me, how do I give it out? How do I understand this is like I'm like God made me in a unique mold. I'm not a coin. I'm not a matbea. A matbea is a coin that's in a mold. A coin maker, so to speak, makes a coin in a mold where every coin is like the other. But the Talmud says the human being is created Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, absolutely unique. So the person is obligated to lech lecha, to kind of go out of like, well, I feel this because I was born in this world. And I'm sort of like, I have this because I was like coming from my parents, but what's what do people tell me is very special about me? Or where do I find myself always again interested and again? Once I understand that that's actually how I was imprinted, like by the Almighty himself, then I am then obligated to uncork it. I have to bring it to the world. The metaphor is of the uncorked perfume bottle. You have a beautiful smelling perfume, but if it is still in its bottle with a cork stuck in, then no one will smell the beautiful smell. So the human being is obligated to uncork the bottle and let and bring the smell, so to speak, bring what makes them great to the world. You're obligated to figure it out. You're then obligated to bring it to the world. Here we have, there's a unique I in the universe. There's an Ani that's absolutely unique. It's only been entrusted to one human being. In other words, God entrusted you with unique qualities. If that unique I does not somehow find expression, then the world will never know it. A precious, unique I has failed to be experienced. That's a tragedy. However, once that I has discovered and learned to express its individuality, it needs to take the next step and bring it out into the world. Each of us has something unique to contribute, and no one else can bring it into the world. So there's so many metaphors, like of another metaphor is like a coal. If a coal isn't lit on fire, it's a black blob. But if it's lit on fire, it gives heat and light to countless people. That's the concept of a soul, that a soul has to be understood and brought out into the world to other people. And when do you have to do that? Now, imatai, ve'im lo achshav imatai. That there's, you actually are prohibited or forbidden to say, I'll do it one day. That we, because we all know that we don't know when our last day is. And we also know that every time we get closer to it, we sabotage it. Something is standing between us and our full expression. In fact, it's funny because in the book of Devarim, it says that I think Moshe says, or maybe it's, I'm not actually, I don't even know in what context it said, but in the book of Devarim, it says, I stand between God and you. So what does it mean? Who's standing between God and the human being? I stand between God and you. God himself says this. It's not Moshe. God himself says this. I stand between God and you. So who is this I who stands between you and the one who created you? It is, our sages say, the I. It's the ego. It's the artificial I that stands between the essential self and God. In other words, the thing that's keeping you from not only knowing, but expressing your true self out into the world is really you, your fears, your self-doubts, your sabotage, your stuckness or whatever it is standing between your true self and God. So these are the 3 steps that the human being is obligated, and not just obligated, but like privileged to go through. And they have to do it now. They have to do it now. So again, there's different layers of understanding this, but I think on the deeper level, it's really understanding that when we say I, it means different things. There is the ego that calls itself I, or the body drives that call itself I. And when we say like, I'm starving, or I'm mad, or I'm furious, or I'm so disgusted, or I hate this, or whatever it is, we should put on the brakes a little and understand, do I really feel this way? Or is it the ego that's kind of got me in its grip? Because there is a deeper I, and we're obligated to find it. So I want to open it up to the group very soon, because I think this is very important. But I did take some questions. I did find some questions that I love, and I think even if you had any desire to find one person in this class and do this work together, the idea of these questions is that I think the best way to understand at least some of these questions is that a human being does not need to look outside of themselves to find their deepest I. They're going to already see it in the way they behave already. So even if you feel like you're wasting a lot of time and you're struggling with wasting a lot of time and watching a lot of TV or whatever, if you look carefully at your behavior, you're going to see that you already have an inclination of your purpose, that you are created in a unique mold, that Judaism says it's not just that it's important for you to know your unique purpose, but it's imperative that you actualize it bring it to the world now. So the idea of these questions is, I read this, it wasn't a Jewish book. I read this in a book called, his name is DeMartini. I can't remember, Inspired something. I can't remember what it was. I can get the name of the book for you. But I wrote this a while back, but he basically, DeMartini's premise made a lot of sense to me, which is that you're already living according to your purpose, because the way you're encoded, you're naturally inclined to seek that out. So if you just kind of observe with curiosity your own behavior, even if you're wasting a lot of time, and even if you feel like you're in a rut, you might notice that certain conversations wake you up. Certain conversations engage you, other conversations leave you a little stone cold. There are things you do where you actually lose a sense of time. You enjoy it so much. There's something you enjoy talking about, learning about. You might even spend more money on this. That's just one area of these questions, is that you're actually already acting according to your purpose, because your pleasure lies there, and we behave according to pleasure. We're pleasure seekers, so we do what gives us pleasure. So pay attention to what gives you pleasure. And there are other questions as well to think about, but the idea is that life is extraordinarily precious. We are not arrogant. We're as humble people. We know we don't know how much time we have. We know that we are created in total uniqueness, that unlike a coin, we are created in a mold of our own that will never be used again. And it's our necessity in our own lives, and also for the world itself, for the tikkun of the world itself, that we know what's special about us, and we bring that uniqueness to the world now. And that's really, I think probably the most profound, John DeMartini, that's it, Linda. Inspired. So if you look on Amazon, it says something inspired, something with the word inspired in it. It's a really interesting, it's not a new book. It's very interesting. John DeMartini. So I want to open it up, because we could go through the questions. I mean, some of the questions, if you had $1 billion, what would you do all day? Meaning, if money didn't hold you back, if you knew there was no failure, what would you love to do? But okay, I've heard those things before. I don't really love those so much. The one question that the famous Harvard psychologist, the Israeli Tal Ben-Shahar, he said that, he gave the famous Venn diagram where there's 3 circles. There's what you're good at, and what you're good at, what you love to do, and what you find and what's meaningful to do it. So naturally talented, and then how you can give back through it, and those that play. what is something that I'm naturally good at, that I love to do, that I can use in a way? Because it can't, your purpose, I think someone once asked, what if my purpose doesn't bring tikkun, doesn't bring light, doesn't bring improvement to the world? And the answer is, that's not it then. Because as Hillel states right here, ani la'atzmi ma ani. If I'm only for myself, if I'm only doing it for myself, then what am I? So I think that Dr. Ben Shahar's Venn diagram is very powerful. I'm good at it. I love it. And I can use it to give back meaningfully. What is that thing that meets in that midpoint, in that kissing point between those 3 points, those 3 questions? And once you can get to it, it's your obligation and it's your privilege to explore now how to bring it to the world. So let's it's so interesting because it's so ancient, but it's so totally relevant for the times we live in today. So let's open it up. We still have 12 minutes. So let's hear from people thoughts about this. What's it bringing up for you? Hi, Susie. You're muted.
I just want to try to give over very briefly, if I can do it accurately. Rabbi Gotti gave a great class last Thursday night. He's doing a class on the 13 principles of faith, one of which is about Moshe. And we talked about humility, and it was amazing. I learned about Moshe what I didn't know, that I think reflects partially into this idea, is that Hashem literally removed the ego of Moshe because he needed to be able to be a perfectly accurate source of Hashem's words and his Torah. And so I never really understood that completely, how that worked. And it was absolutely fascinating because, you say Hashem was or you say Moshe was was the most humble man that ever lived. And yet he was such a great leader, and that we have a misconception of what humility means. And it means for us normal people who are not Moshe, the ability to set your ego aside, even some of the time, is maybe what God actually made you, that original source of who your personality truly is. The core of it can come out more easily if you can wipe some of that ego away.
Susie, that's really great. Everything you said is incredible, but the first part, the idea that God literally had to almost remove, Renee, that's true. That God literally had to remove his ego, because if there were any ego, the transmission wouldn't be absolute and accurate.
There would be bias. There would be because every individual person, Rabbi Gotti said, he has a bias, which is totally true. And so no matter what somebody says to you, you may not impart it in the same way as somebody else would. And Hashem had to be perfect. This had to be completely and ultimately a true, exact transmission that was not biased.
The only thing I'm struggling with what you're saying, I think it's really profound, but I don't like, and I don't think I agree that God removed Moshe's ego. I think Moshe, through his own free will, removed his ego from his own sense of I, because otherwise, if God had removed his ego, then Moshe would have been like a robot. I'm not comfortable with saying that God removed his ego.
So maybe it was a combination of Moshe's willingness to let Hashem remove his ego, because he divorced his wife. He became such a holy person with, people couldn't look at him. He was so translucent and so giving off so much light. So I don't know whether Hashem actually removed the ego or he did, but the point is that he was like a window. Exactly.
Yeah, right.
His core was, he was at his core. There was nothing, no bias.
That's beautiful. And Marilyn just said it denigrates. I mean, if in fact it was removed from him, it's problematic. But
he had to be willingly.
Right.
He had to be willingly.
Right.
But he couldn't. No one. But can anyone do that completely by themselves? Any human being? Moshe was a human being. No. He needed Hashem's help to do that, because I think it's impossible to totally.
I love what you're saying. Beautiful. And we see it in our own lives. The bigger the ego, the less accurate the reflection of what we're hearing and absorbing from the outside world. So even though Moshe's kind of like the ultimate example, in our own lives, I think what Susie's saying is so true, that kind of like the greater the ego, the less accurate we're absorbing external information, because so the less the less ego, the more we're able to purely receive what somebody else is trying to give to us. But this is not my time. Who else has something that they want to share? Thank you, Susie. Very interesting. Hi, Linda.
Hi. I find this class very interesting and very thought-provoking, and I think the thought of stripping away all influences from family, from community, from culture, in order to find what one's true self, and then find and observe one's behavior to see what drives us and gives passion. That's such a huge standard to meet, that to me suggests exactitude. And that I have been, all of you know it, that I've been working about this. What is the one thing? Who is the true me? And so that part I'm having troubles with. Is it just like the one thing? Is it a variety of things that maybe with deep introspection leads to the one thing, the one passion, the one value? As long as it's not motivated just for my own or one's own personal end all and be all, but to be a healthy self, to give more to the world.
Yeah. Hi, Brenda.
I wanted to Linda.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I certainly agree that all of the things you mentioned are a process. The one thing that does not need to be a process is the part that says, do it now. There are so many things that we can just do. And so in the doing, I think the others will shape around it also, because what Allie said about procrastinating, that I personally can't do that anymore. Maybe it's my age, maybe it's my learning, whatever, but just do it is something I think we can focus on those last words, whatever it is that needs to be done, even if it's personal, even if it's for your family or the whole world. Don't sit on it anymore, do it.
Hold on, Brenda, what you said in the beginning, I think I just want to ask you again. So you're saying that the third part of the Mishnah, just do it, if you just do it and don't overanalyze and just do and just give back, you're going to figure, the other stuff will fall into place. Is that what you were saying?
To a place, but it will inform you. It will
Yeah.
inform.
Okay, so we have Stephen and Robin that I see.
Well, Linda, for a while, you seem to be struggling with this whole idea of a purpose. I'm just wondering, I know you've been thinking about it for a really, really long time. I'm just wondering where your thoughts are leading you in terms of an actual sense of purpose, if it has led you in that direction. I think you're muted.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I would say about a week or so ago, it just came to me that I'm just tired of thinking about life, and now I'm to doing life.
Mhm.
So anytime I sit down and I'm thinking about, should I do blah, blah? No, I'm just going to do it. Or if I'm
Mhm.
thinking about somebody, no, I'm just going to go make them applesauce and bring it over. I'm actually waiting for the ice to melt because I am scared to walk on the ice. But I do have my apples and I do have my washed plastic containers because my other stuff that I gave away, I never got my glass containers, which I don't care about. So now it's going to be plastic. But I've been coming to that, and I haven't really, I'm just going with it so that whatever I think about it, I say, got to do it. Just stop thinking, just got to do. And maybe I'm hoping perhaps, as Brenda is suggesting, that the more I just go with the process without thinking, what is the ultimate end goal? You know, what is that golden ring that I'm supposed to show off to the world as I'm doing whatever I'm doing to help others? Well, maybe I'll get that insight as I start doing. It's the best I can think of right now. Otherwise, I devolved into an ugly place of angst.
You know, it's funny, Linda, because I feel like that's what the Mishnah is saying. It's like, think about it, but just do it. Sort of what Brenda's saying. I mean, that's really the Mishnah. It's like the human being is obligated and privileged to understand who they are and bring it to the world. But lest you get lost into, to thinking, Linda, like you were saying, just know that the act of doing is redemptive. The act of doing is the essential point. So I think what Brenda's saying, and Linda, what you're saying now, I really think that's what the Mishnah's, I think that's the point of the Mishnah. I really do. Robin, what were you going to say? Oh, you're muted.
I was going to say, don't overthink it.
Yeah.
It could be the littlest thing. I'll tell you something funny. I was in the grocery store before Thanksgiving and I happen to love candy corn. So I'm in line. So I said to this guy, oh my God, I have to get this candy corn. I love it. He goes, oh, my wife would just kill me. I just love it too. I grabbed 2 bags. I threw him a bag before I left. He goes, no. I said, just take it. Have a happy Thanksgiving. It's like, it's the littlest things that if you give someone a compliment, like that is the greatest shirt. You're just standing in line somewhere. That's giving someone something that they didn't have during the day. You gave them a compliment. No, who knows if they're going to get a compliment during the day? It could be the littlest thing or it could be the biggest thing because you don't know what your act of kindness, what it's going to be. I like to be a very purposeful person. That's, to me, I want to touch someone's life. That's just my mantra that I do, all the time. And Allie knows a lot of it. And it's like, but it could be the littlest thing that even you don't even know that you're doing for someone, from applesauce, from a compliment. I think you could really overthink it and make yourself crazy.
On the other hand, Robin, I think if I had to think of one word that summed up this mission, it would be balance. So
Right.
Your point's well taken, and Brenda and Linda too, which is, at the end of the day, do, like, we don't know, just do now. However, it is preceded by 2 verses that say to the human being. You must like ponder deeply who you are separate from who you become through your culture, and really tap into that true self. So it is about action. I mean, the second two are really about action, but I just want to say that it is preceded by contemplation. So I don't want to downplay contemplation, because I think that's an essential part of the Jewish sense of the balanced human being is contemplation and action too. But we can't underestimate the contemplation component. Although, Linda, right, you don't want to do it to the point where you're making yourself crazy, but there's value to it. There's value to it. It's the first part of our Mishnah.
And, I wanted to say, it's okay to be uncomfortable, with some things that you want to do. I mean, part of life is getting comfortable. Like, we're not all comfortable with COVID right now. It's like, it's come full circle again. And you have to, say to yourself, it's okay to be uncomfortable. Sometimes it's the uncomfortableness that makes you grow as a person too. And it's how do you overcome it, or what strategies you just need to have to form that balance in your life. And I had a professor in school that believed in the social work program that I want you to have experience in everything that you're uncomfortable with. And let me tell you, as soon as I said I'm uncomfortable, he goes, that's the first thing you're going to be doing. And that was working with heroin addicts. It's like, okay, let's go do it, and, I don't think there is time for procrastinating. I'm not big on that word, because I don't procrastinate, and I like to get in and get dirty. But it's okay to not judge your own feelings and just feel what you're feeling, and, and then move on from that. But, take the time to achieve that balance, and, without judgment, like we talked about before. You can't be so harsh on yourself, because everyone's
Yes.
balance is different for everyone.
Yeah.
Can I throw something in real quick? It's Leslie.
Yeah, who's that? Hi, Leslie.
It's Leslie. I'm very
Oh,
late
I don't see you. Okay, you're
'cause
right.
I'm
I see your
I'm-
hand. Okay.
yeah,
Hi.
I'm in the car, and I'm very late to be somewhere, but it's really important. I just felt like I wanted to say this to Linda. I started studying with Allie 13 years ago, and that was the first we did this whole exercise on figuring out what your yud, right? You called it is,
Yeah, that's right, Leslie.
your
That's right.
special spark. And I felt too like this pressure to figure it out. And I think it's a combination. That's why I like this Mishnah being like all together, because I think it's a combination of, as you're doing, you're thinking, as you're thinking about it, you're doing, and it all comes together. And it took me, it took years, but I didn't get upset about it. It just like, as you're thinking about it and you're going through life, like just being cognizant of it, little by little by little, it comes to you. And the second thing that I want to say is, it's not I also don't think it's a like one thing. Like, to me, it was like I was perplexed by trying to figure out like the one thing, but it's not, for me, it's a concept about myself that could be used in so many different ways. It's just, it was an overall, like, that's what came to me is my special thing is just this kind of broader concept about myself, not like,
Yes.
I am the most, I am the best at blank, or it's a much broader
It was a conceptual,
concept.
but you ultimately arrived at like a concept that you felt summed up what was unique about you.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Conceptual. Okay.
So.
I think that's a really important point, that it's not necessarily one thing, but I also liked what you said at the beginning. As I do, I think, and as I think, I do, that I'm engaged in both aspects at any given time. I really like that.
All right, I have to go. Thank you for everything.
Thank
See
you,
everybody next
Leslie.
week.
Thank you.
Like a lot of agreement, right, Renee? Yeah, we're right. Thank God, Renee, that how often do you see people agreeing with each other today? It's not so bad. All right, everybody. I want to honor everybody's time. So wishing everybody a great week. Hoping I get to see you soon.
You too,
Donald,
Albie.
You
Steve,
too.
Think Israel.
Good to see you.
Miss you.
Hi,
Okay,
everybody. Wishing you all a
Sending
happy and
love.
healthy new year.
balance,
too.
right. The human being in balance. That's right, Sue. Thanks, Marilyn.
Bye,
Thank you.
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Happy New Year, everybody.